back to my channel. So I'm talking about the Bucha atrocity. So that's a small town just north of Kiev, which was held by the Russian army for around a month, and they just withdrew recently. So there is a plenitude of evidence of Russian war crimes committed there. I don't want to be coming across as Russophobic or indeed accusing all or even most Russian soldiers of being even complicit in this kind of thing, but I'm afraid it's unavoidable to say that at least some of them have done this, and the evidence is really uncontestable. But despite that, of course, the Kremlin is going to deny everything, even when there's irrefragable evidence. So yeah, at least 20 civilian corpses have been found, and there's a case of a family that was taken hostage 10 days ago, and their four bodies have turned up. You can see this on multiple media outlets. And I know what Kremlin trolls will say, oh, well, you can't trust the Western media and they're just making it all up. I mean, no matter how proven things are, they will deny, deny, deny. And obviously, chapter and verse can be given of the names of these people, the dates of birth, and things like that. Hello, Qasim, and your wife, Farah. So obviously the Russian military has been abducting tens of thousands of civilians, certainly in the east, in the Mariupol region. So yeah, at least 20 civilians murdered. And if you kill civilians knowing them to be civilians and you're willfully doing it, then that is murder. It's different if you're trying to kill soldiers, you accidentally kill some civilians, or you blow up a building with some soldiers in it, but there's some civilians too. That wouldn't be. But if you're going out of your way to kill civilians, knowing them not to be a threat to you, then that's clearly a war crime. So it's an atrocity. Massacre might be an exaggeration at this stage. Is 20 people enough to be a massacre? I don't think so. And then there is this shallow grave where there's said to be scores of dead bodies there. But I don't want to jump the gun and say who they are or what they are. They could be Ukrainian soldiers, they could be Russian soldiers. We shall see. I know there's all sorts of ways for Moscow to muddy the waters in this one, saying, well, see these photos, even this video footage, there's no proof that that's from Bucha, that could be from another town. Well, even if you can actually compare it using Google Earth and Google Maps and show, no, it is. If you look at the photos of the place, or how do you know this is now? This could have been years ago, or it's all photoshopped and those images are placed there in images of Bucha, and this person could have been killed by the Ukrainian military, or could have been a Russian soldier who was killed and then they dressed him in civilian clothes, or all sorts of very implausible explications of the situation. And of course, the Russian foreign minister, who really is a super liar, Sergei Lavrov, has said the whole thing is a hoax, that it was staged. Yeah, the Russians claim that they saw people moving the photos. Well, I would like to see some people moving the photos. I know there is there's a sort of reflex action of a corpse, but that's only for a few minutes after death. It's not a few days after death. And it'd be great if international investigators could come, from Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, or whatever. I think the United Nations will not, because of course Russia will veto it, being a permanent member of the Security Council. Dmitry Peskov, who's Kremlin's personal spokesman, he said the whole thing is twaddle, so that's not really surprising. Just a denialism, no matter how irrefragable the evidence. This is a superabundance of probative evidence. The Russian military, I'm afraid to say, has previous on this one. They've done this kind of thing all over the world. Now, I know probably every army's committed war crimes, but one army in recent times commits them surely more than any other. I can't think of any other army in the last 20 years, maybe more, that's committed so many war crimes and on such a scale, and with more or less total impunity. I think it's over 20 years since a Russian soldier has even been prosecuted, never mind convicted, of a crime against the civilian population. There was a Russian army officer who strangled a young woman to death in Chechnya, and he was actually jailed for it, but released after just a few years. Some of the people who were shot dead had their hands behind their back, and then I've not heard any explanation that they were judicially executed. And Putin's his satrapies in eastern Ukraine, Luhansk and Donbass, some of them revived codicils from the Stalin-era penal code to say that a troika of officers could summarily try a person and award the sentence of death, which would be executed immediately without any opportunity for an appeal and so forth. So no doubt more corpses will turn up. Ukrainian government says 410 civilian dead bodies have been found in the areas around Kiev. I think that means excluding Kiev itself. Now, some of these people could be killed in bombardment or collateral damage if they were purposefully killed, knowing them to be civilians, and that's different. That would be murder. I know in modern warfare, civilians are inevitably killed because there are all these high explosives and these incendiaries going to kill people in a wide area. You've got to try and be discriminating and only kill enemy combatants and try not to kill combatants. But it seems like the Russian military doesn't try to spare civilians whatsoever. And as I say, tens of thousands have been abducted and taken into Russia, forced to sign various documents saying they're happy to do so, to be taken to very remote regions so they can't easily escape back to Ukraine. And then they're effectively hostages. Not that I think Russia's threatening to kill them, but say, well, they won't be returned until we get a peace deal that we find to our satisfaction. But Russia's obviously explanations for what's been going on have been completely dissatisfactory. So it does not add to Russian réclame that all these crimes against humanity have been committed. So numerous governments have denounced these crimes against humanity, not just European ones, but like, say, Japan, New Zealand, and so forth. So now President Zelensky says it's a genocide. I don't buy that. I think that's just rhetorical. It's an exaggeration. Yes, civilians have been willfully murdered, but I don't think it's an attempt to annihilate the Ukrainian people or even a significant proportion thereof. I mean, this is the worst crime that exists, genocide, so it's not something to be used lightly. The United Nations has confirmed that 1,400 civilians have been killed in this conflict, and the UN acknowledges the true death toll among civilians is probably several-fold that, because the UN has to establish four things: that such a person actually existed, wasn't simply a figment of somebody else's imagination, and that this person was indeed killed by the war and not by something else, or the person actually is dead and all the rest of it. The person really was a civilian and not a soldier, and so on. So this is an attempt to crush Ukrainian morale, just terrorizing the civilian population. We're going to carry on killing your geriatrics, your children, and so on, until you submit. But it doesn't look like there's going to be any capitulation. It may have, in fact, harden Ukrainian resistance. There is talk of an embargo on Russian oil and gas. The French are talking about it. They buy rather less oil and gas than from Russia than most European countries, but it's just not doable for places like Finland, Germany, Hungary, and so on, who are highly dependent on it. But I mean, the longer term desire to wean European economies off Russian hydrocarbons has been redoubled. I don't buy this Russian ruse that we're de-escalating the conflict in the north as a good faith gesture, pursuant to, because of these peace talks which are coming up in Turkey. It's because their campaign is stalled there, to say the least, concentrate in the east and the Donbass region, where they think they'll be welcomed by more of the population. Probably not after you killed so many of them, though, and the logistic problems will be less, and it could create a land bridge to Crimea. They can attack east from Russia. They can attack or from south, from the south, from Crimea. They can land from the south as well on the Black Sea and so on, and maybe cut off some of the Ukrainian troops, prevent them retreating to defend Kiev. But Kiev is certainly out of immediate danger. I noticed that Putin, he just called up 160,000 young men under the age of 27. But these draftees, they're going to have to serve until at least the 1st of July, but that won't even get them through basic training. But they might be sent to quieter sectors of the border to guard other frontiers, while more experienced troops are sent into Ukraine. But obviously it's looking bad for the Russians. Obviously morale is low. They might start deserting in droves, surrendering, might even mutiny because they're poorly officered, they've been lied to so much. They're not adequately furnished with food, ammunition, fuel, anything. Supposedly they're selling these things in Belarus on quite a significant scale. So that's it. There is a really uncontrovertible evidence, and a lot of corroborative details have been provided by the Ukrainians, and it's going to be very carefully documented. But the Polish Prime Minister said that this is genocide. So, well, it's a really horrific situation, and is imbecilic apart from being immoral for Russia to do this, because if there's any idea that NATO or Ukraine, NATO and the EU could cut a deal with Russia over Ukraine, could just shrug it off. I mean, that's gone really because of these foul atrocities on quite a large scale, the denialism, the failure to do the least thing to even discipline troops for these crimes. Right, that's enough. Thank you for watching my channel. Toodaloo.